Let's see one of the more interesting controls, the picker control. Now officially there's actually several types of picker control. If I'm in Interface Builder and in the library and I filter on picker, I'll see three of them. There's an image picker, which we'll see a little later on, and then there's a picker view and a date picker. I'm going to work with the date picker right now. It's the most straightforward one of the picker controls. I'm going to drag that to my view. Now this actually does what it says. It's a date picker, but if you notice the mode over here in the inspector panel, you can also make it do times or just dates or be a timer like the timer control in the clock application, or both date and time, which is the default mode. It is actually going to default itself every time it's used to today's date. You can write a little bit of code to change that if you want to. I'm just going to use the date mode because I'm going to create a simple application that allows the user to select a date and then find out what day of the week that was. So I'm going to add one more piece. I'm going to remove my filter from the library and then just come down in the library and find the round rect button. Drag that on there, double click it and say, what day is that? So that's my interface created, fairly simple stuff. Now, I'm just going to go back into Xcode, where if I look at my view controller header file, I can see that I've added in the IB outlet for the date picker, and I've added an IB action called display day, which is what I want the button to do. So back over in Interface Builder, what I'm going to do is just hook them up to my file's owner. And again, I can do it either way, but I'm going to select file's owner, right click or control click it, and then DP is the date picker, which I'm going to connect to the date picker control. And in the received actions display day, I'm going to connect to the button. And I want to do it on the touch up inside. Select that, save, and I'm going to go back into Xcode. In my implementation file, I have the skeleton of the display day method already created with code goes here, and I'm going to add the code that I need to make this work. So rather than type things line by line, let me show you the code that I'm going to use just to make some behavior happen. On line 16, I create a NSDate variable called chosen, and all I'm doing there is reaching into the date picker, which is DP, and saying I want its date property. On line 17 and 18, here's what might seem a little bit unusual. What I'm doing is creating an NSDate formatter object, and then I'm setting its date format to the string EEEE. A date formatter object is available in Cocoa. What it allows you to do, not surprisingly, is format your dates in all sorts of different ways than just the internal representation of a date. And what it's using is Unicode date formats. If you wanted to see all the different hundreds of combinations of date formats, you could just Google Unicode date formats, or indeed look up the date formatting options in the Xcode documentation. It will give you a pointer to that. But just to say the EEEE, unusual as it may sound, 4 E's means represent a day of the week in its full name form. So Monday instead of MON, or instead of the number of the day of the week. Then on line 20, what we're going to use is the formatter object, and it has a method called string from date, and where we're passing in the date chosen. That's going to return us a string, which is going to be using that selected date format from our particular date object, which was called chosen. On line 21, I create a string called MSG just for a message, and that's going to have a string that says that's a Monday, or that's a Tuesday, or that's a Wednesday. So there's a little placeholder in that string that will be replaced by the weekday. All I'm doing on line 23 is creating an alert view that's just going to have a title on it, have the message that we created, and then on line 28, I'm going to show that alert, and then line 30, 31, and 32, I'll be releasing anything that I created using alloc or any kind of init. So that's the date formatter object, the alert object, and the message object. Those are the only ones that I created using an alloc, an init, or any of the init convenience methods. So let's give this a go and see what happens. I'm going to compile this and run it, click build and go. The date picker comes up and it will default to today's date. If I'd wanted to change that, I could have put in a line of code in, say, viewDidLoad that would set a default date to some other date. I'm going to then move around and select something at random. Again, we don't want that display date code to be called just because the value has changed on the date picker. We want to choose when that happens, so I'm going to just click the button. What day is that? Well, apparently December the 22nd, 1994 was a Thursday. And then we can just start spinning a few of these things around and finding that in 2003 was a Monday. So simple application, but this is how you'd start to hook up a date picker control to a button into your code and start to manipulate it.